Alright, in this animation you see one neuron. You see the branches on the left, they would be the dendrites. You see the cell body, and then the long axon towards the right ending in terminals. And back on the dendrites, you'll see those little red things that are sort of moving down the dendrites towards the cell body. That would indicate that there is an active synapse out there on a dendrite somewhere, and that synapse has electrically excited the dendrites in that region, and the cell body is going to integrate all of these electrical signals and sort of decide to generate its own output signal, which is the yellow one that you see racing down the axon. So the little red ones rushing towards the cell body, that's indicating that the cell is detecting activity at many synapses, and in response the cell is going to generate its own electrical signal, the yellow one. And when its electrical signal races down the axon and gets to the terminals, that's where chemicals get released. Now, depending on the type of chemical released, the target cell can either be excited or inhibited. So there are many different types of chemicals called neurotransmitters, and they have different effects on the target cell. But for our purposes, we'll just get the basics down of how this neuron operates. One last thing about the neuron can send different frequencies of electrical signals down its axon in response to activity in its dendrites. So let's say that this cell is currently receiving sort of low activity on its dendrites, so there's not much action happening out there on the dendrites. Well, you see the frequency of yellow electrical signals is at a certain level. There's a certain number of signals per second. Now suppose there was more activity detected out on the dendrites. Remember, there might be thousands of synapses out there on the dendrites. So if there's more activity detected, then what the cell body does is it generates a higher frequency of electrical signals down its axon. So there would be more yellow signals per second racing down the axon. In this way, then, the frequency of electrical signals can represent the level of activity detected by the dendrites. And we'll see that this mechanism is at play in our sensory system. So for example, if this cell were a sensory cell in our skin and its job was to detect touch or pressure, then a light touch or low pressure would generate a low frequency of electrical signals. So there would be a few yellow signals per second racing down the axon. But a more intense touch, a stronger touch, more pressure would generate a higher frequency electrical signal racing down the axon. There'd be more yellow signals per second. That's what higher frequency would mean. So in that way, then, the frequency of electrical signals can represent the intensity of the stimulus at the surface of the skin.